At this point in time, I'm sure everyone's well aware of a certain trailer regarding a beloved DreamWorks property, one that is actually much better than everyone took for granted during the time of its release, known as Megamind, where now all of a sudden, they decided to make a sequel, or more specifically in this case, a pilot to the new series airing on Peacock, one of the worst mainstream streaming services out there in my opinion. And because of that, the reactions to the thing have gotten quite negative for very understandable reasons, with an unnecessary continuation of a story that worked out well the way it actually did, and looking more like a Saturday morning cartoon with animation that is less than stellar. That in this day and age, after the supposed sequel comeback story with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, DreamWorks returns to utter crap as shown here. Something that just doesn't seem quite as justifiable because it's a movie meant to be a pilot for a TV series rather than a fully fledged sequel longer than the short movie that they did a year after the original film's release. I mean, I knew that they were going to do something like this to make a series based upon the movie, but having a movie release first just actually shocks me, especially for the fact that it's only going to come out on streaming. I mean, I get why since the quality is like that, but this is just turning Megamind into a franchise that doesn't really even need to exist like the other DreamWorks films of Boss Baby and Trolls. Because, after all, that is the major focus recently since they didn't have a fully memorable year in 2023 alone, just like Disney, with a box office bomb and an okay film at best with Trolls 3, where this 2024 is trying to bring them back again with the likes of Kung Fu Panda 4 as a sequel back in theaters, since I also found out that they're releasing a Netflix movie in between earlier this month. But doing something like this does serve as an insult for those who actually love Megamind for its story and shaping the destiny of a hero, more than what we see on the surface. The reason why I wanted to create a video describing him as a perfect hero because it generally does something different finding someone's path in life, why he chose to be bad because society deemed him so, while also learning to fight for something else for who he actually is inside, ending on a perfect note that didn't even need to continue, other than the Button of Doom short, which was alright for its time. I mean, it's still fine if you want to make a kid show based around those characters, but then again, it just doesn't feel right to make a franchise out of an idea that doesn't really even need it, and especially the reaction to the people who will watch it who grew up with that certain movie and expect to see more out of it. There's not much you can do out of this story in his own aftermath for a regular short feature film to begin with. It just does not work because the story is good on its own. Where the most painful thing about all of this is the fact that it's written by the same guys who did the first film, but feels like it veers far off from the very version that they wrote originally, other than the animation of course. It's like DreamWorks constantly wants to be Disney throughout its history now, going back to that same terrible era of the direct-to-DVDs by now having direct-to-streaming sequels on Universal's Peacock masqueraded as pilots of their series, because that's the fact of what the older Disney sequels did. They were pilots of cancelled or short-lived TV shows, and they weren't as critically successful as their original great films. Where at least in recent times, with what Disney has done investing in Disney Plus, where we can criticize that enough and on its own, they at least are still making short fun series produced by Walt Disney Animation itself around the characters of the original films, rather than fully fledged direct-to-DVD quality anymore. That they're still focused and the animation is up to par, except for something like this, where this one is in fact produced by DreamWorks Television Animation, hence why it does look like crap to be honest. It is literally no different from the time that Disney produced those films by the Disney Toon Studio and Walt Disney Television Animation, and that is honestly kind of sad to see, especially with the fact that Universal is planning next year to release their own live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon and a newer theme park known as Epic Universe, just seeming like Universal is trying so hard to become Disney for some reason. I mean, they are competitors and I understand that, and that has been the case for hundreds of years at this point, but still, it just feels weird like they're going the same route Disney has done for terrible decisions in remakes and whatnot. But of course, the biggest fact that everyone seems to hate is how Will Ferrell and Tina Fey are not involved in this project at all, which of course does seem obvious since they are going with the shit direct-to-streaming quality with the series itself, but also mind-boggling at the same time since Will Ferrell is also going to be in Despicable Me 4 as the villain. You know, Universal's other animation studio with Illumination? Like that doesn't really make any sense at all unless we take into account the money, and how they won't spend too much on this anyway, and mainly how it doesn't sound right at all. Like if you watch the first film at all, you would understand that Megamind is in fact Will Ferrell. The character has this distinct feel and sound to him, where the voice actor portrayed in this current version doesn't really sound like that. No disrespect to to them since I feel like they are talented and they have a resume of past great works, but they just cannot create the same feeling that the original has in what it meant. Still at least better if they were going to go the route the world is taking with AI that is going to result in our ultimate extinction to come, but still just does not feel even close to what Megamind is supposed to feel or sound like. Everything you see involved with this just looks like a cheap disaster in the making, and I don't see it recovering anytime soon, even if the series turns out to be better. There are many mistakes that are too hard to ignore, and it's very clear that they shouldn't have made it at all, because above all, this series just seems to contradict a lot of things about the character and the story already with its old villainous crew since he served as a loner with Minion for the most part. The story of both Megamind and Metro Man coming together and what that meant for going forward with the path that they took in life. I'm not sure how this even works considering that everyone heard about his heroic deeds in the city and in the entire world, and why these people still think he is one way. Well, once again, this still feels like the same problem as the direct-to-DVD sequels, thinking in terms of The Hunchback 1 and the second film where you went from Frollo to Chuck McGill's voice as the villain, the facade of a real villain, and of course, Titan to whatever this group of clowns is. Like, that doesn't make sense. How can you go from something that was so great like that and then turn out to be Saturday morning cartoon villains that get defeated easily at the end? Like, nothing about it makes any sense compared to the idea that Megamind presented at all. How does this company produce fantastic sequels but then decides to also produce total crap ones at the same time? This never helped when they first announced that they said the series was also going to focus on Megamind's journey as a hero and a social media influencer, as that was totally necessary to show to connect with what the film meant at all instead of a clear desperate attempt to play into modern trends at the time. Like, really, why do we need to follow a trend of Megamind becoming a social media influencer? That is not the point of its character. The movie is fun and great on its own because it doesn't need to focus on those trivial ideas that we hold in society that do not last very long. It's just so great that we've regressed 20 years of animation for this studio again at the point where it looks like crap. I mean, it's not by DreamWorks Animation again officially, but it's still attached to it in some way, just like Disney did with their TV departments for a total crap streaming service that is hard to navigate and only hosts a select few of films that I would want to watch with Netflix taking the other half. Because do you really think I would watch anything on a service named Peacock? I don't, and I just really hate this service and only use it in parts, and I just do not like the fact that you're simply creating a direct-to-streaming film for it at all, especially for a franchise like Megamind. Thinking in terms of the reactions, it would be more valuable to simply release a mainstream sequel at this point because they value Megamind. Or even, why the hell not, just make a live action film with Will Ferrell just dressed up as Megamind again. That makes total sense compared to a streaming movie that no one would ever want to watch except for kids. It just represents the overall problem that you could have with companies like this, making things for the sake of it without understanding why it worked in the first place, relegating it to this part because it's not as viable as a franchise like Boss Baby for some reason. Like, you want to release it to a streaming service so people can forget it easily compared to what you did before with Shrek the Third in theaters that long ago. Because of course, most people do hate that film. No one these days no longer thinks rationally of what they can do that people like long after they've grown up, and only for the necessity of this new streaming era that everyone seems to regret now existing. An excuse to create a generic show and a generic movie while selling it as a continuation of a beloved story you fell in love with that long ago. That is just saying something of the quality this is showing. Like, seriously, social media influencer is the route you are trying to take with this? That sounds like a sick joke, adding bunch of characters who completely butchered the point of Megamind and Metro Man. I just love the fact that this is a society we have to live in now, agreeing with the tons of videos that have been butchering my browsing page here on YouTube that this is the worst thing to exist here in the year of 2024. Not even able to make such simple animation work, regressing the character to a path everyone already knew he existed from the meaning of its story. But anyways, go ahead and make your show for kids that isn't well connected to the meaning of the original. It won't hurt you since nobody is willing to care or watch for it anyway, because I won't, and that's as far as I'm willing to take it in regards to talking about Megamind moving forward. So with that all said, I'm all done, so goodbye.